Hi everyone, welcome to day 5 of our 12 Days of Wellness series here at Ogden Clinic. Our segment for today is about spending less and saving more during the holidays. As we know, all of those spends kind of rack up and we want to make sure that we are budgeting more. So we have a very special guest and someone that is great with money, great with budgets, that is going to provide us some great information. So I'm going to let Quincy introduce himself.
We'll see what I do, but my name is Quincy Robinson. I am a senior practice administrator with Ogden Clinic. I have been with the company a little over 11 years now. It's a great company to be with, and as part of my job, I deal with budgets and operations with the clinic and stuff like that. So hopefully I can share some ideas. I also am a dad of 6 kids, so big family. I also am the youngest of 7 kids. Christmas is a big deal in our house right now, so
Awesome.
hopefully I can share some ideas that maybe help somebody.
Yeah, especially with 6 kids. I mean, there's a lot of gifts and lots of presents that you need to buy.
Yep.
So let's kind of just dive in and talk a little bit about, why is it important to have a holiday budget? I know a lot of people sometimes don't think about setting a budget. We kind of just go to the store and we're like, I need to buy gifts for this person, that person, and we don't really stop and think about creating a budget. And why is that super important, if you're trying to save money?
I think as a standard, having a budget is always good to be able to manage your money, because you don't want to end up spending a lot more than you don't have, especially in this day and age with credit cards or layaway. You could probably buy a lot more than you really have the money for. And so it's always key and critical to sit down and kind of plan out, right? And I think we'll get into this a little bit later in the Facebook Live, kind of some ideas of how to go about doing that. But I think it's just critical, because if you spend more than you have, you're going to be up a creek.
Right, exactly. And how would someone start to set a holiday budget? I know that's the biggest question people have, I want a budget, but I don't really know how. It's kind of confusing. It seems like it's something that's really simple, but it can be confusing to a lot of people.
I think a budget is supposed to work around you as an individual, right? You have to be really careful. A budget can't be something that just dictates your life. I mean, it should guide your life and it should dictate it, but it should be with what you want. So when you're trying to sit down what your Christmas budget is, I think before you figure that out, you need to figure out what you're wanting out of it. Are you a family that likes lots of gifts and that gift receiving is a big value to you as well? Then that's something that you should look into and you should maybe plan accordingly. But if you're a family that wants experience, things like that, and then you've kind of got to figure out, who are you going to give the gifts to? What is your money for? For example, in my family, we want to have a certain amount of gifts for each child. My wife is one of 7 kids. Her siblings don't give gifts. They actually just have a brunch that we get together on Christmas Eve in the morning, and we just all bring food and we eat together. Right. So my budget for that's gonna be a little bit different than with my family. We each have a sibling we're assigned, and we as a family we've decided it's this amount, $40 every year is what your budget is, and that helps accordingly. So you have to sit down and kind of figure out, well, what am I wanting? How much am I giving? And then plan accordingly.
Right.
And then I think another thing that's helpful as well is to start kind of compiling what you want to give. And then you can kind of plan accordingly with the budget, see if you can make them mirror and work together.
Right.
So.
And one thing you kind of said is thinking about each gifts you have, and you having kids, being a dad. Kids during this time tend to ask for a lot of things. They often think the parents have everything that they want, that they can give them anything. So how do you, for our parents that are watching, how do you determine what gifts to give to your kids and which ones to kind of cross out of the list and kind of balance that out?
We try to teach our kids, one, that there is a limit of money, right? That they can't just have everything under the sun. They're still learning what the concept is of the money. One thing that we also do, my kids and my family know that Santa's sleigh is packed up probably at the beginning of December. And also mom and dad, we have a certain budget that we, every mom has bought, or dad's bought all the gifts, mom has bought all the gifts by the beginning of December, and they need to give us what they'd like ahead of time. Because we always have this fear that they're going to be talking to someone the week before, and all of a sudden they're going to, oh yeah, I want this. And it's I had a coworker a few years ago who was telling us a story that on Christmas Eve, they realized that their son wanted a remote control car, and he was driving to Walgreens, trying to find one Walgreens that was open on Christmas Eve to see if they even had a remote control car, and I'm sure he spent a pretty penny on that because it was a big deal for his son. Obviously you can't control everything, and sometimes kids themselves don't even know what they want. But we try to at least have them tell us ahead of time kind of what they're thinking and what they're wanting.
Awesome. And you mentioned a little bit about, even family members. I know that's a big part of kind of budgeting is knowing like family expectations and all of those things. How do you have those conversations with your family? I mean, from personal experience, you know, either you're doing a Secret Santa or you're picking someone in the family.
Yeah.
For families that might not do that yet and they're like, how do I open up this conversation? What's some tips that you would give or some advice?
I think it's fair to kind of remember that really the reason for the season is not just to get all you want.
Right.
I know that there's fun in giving out the gift. I think it's beneficial to not be afraid to have the conversation with your loved ones and say, you know what are we looking at? What is an appropriate amount? We're looking at our finances, maybe finance a little tighter this year, you know, with the pandemic. Maybe people have been out of work for a little bit. Maybe we don't have as much money saved up. And maybe have an open conversation and not be afraid to be the one to put forth what your limits are.
Right.
Like, you know what, maybe you have that one Aunt Susan that just has $50 million or whatever, and she's just constantly giving stuff. And but it's okay to say, you know what, we're going to have a budget. And sometimes I feel like a budget can even be freeing. Right, like if I know I have only $40 to spend on this individual, and I know all year, maybe I'm going to start watching for sales. Maybe I'm going to start looking for things, and in the back of my mind, and once I see something, I can take advantage, and maybe I can buy something.
Right.
Maybe that's helpful.
Yeah, that is definitely helpful. I know it's a little later in the year now, but I'm thinking, you know, later on next year, starting to purchase early and kind of looking at those sales is a good approach as well. But what are some things, I know we've talked a little bit about family expectations, different approaches we can take, but what are some things that maybe we tend to buy during the holidays or we tend to kind of fall into the cracks, like credit cards or warranties? What are some things that people should avoid this holiday season that could also help them save a little money?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to sit down and just remind yourself that you're going to try and stay within your budget is the first thing, right? Only spend the money that you have. The risk and the concern with the credit card is that you can think, oh, I can pay for that later. Right. And it's expensive. They're up to 14, 15, maybe higher percentage. It can be interest rate on those things. So really, you need to be careful that I'll pay for that later. A lot of the retail stores, you're in there, oh, if you open up a credit card with us, you get 20% off your purchase this time, or 30% off. Like I was at Kohl's the other day, and they have 35% off your first purchase if you sign up for it. But there is value in that, right? So if let's say I've set aside this amount of money for Christmas gifts, and you're now at Kohl's and you're buying that gift that you've kind of planned out, and all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe I can set up the credit card. I'll get the 35% off. That helps my Christmas money go further. But then in the back of your mind, you have to always treat your credit card as a debit card.
Right.
You can only spend what you have in your bank account. And that there's some perks with that. There's discount, there's money back. I mean, you can accrue points, you know, depending on how you want to use it. But if you go into it expecting that, oh, I'll pay for it later and don't really plan for that, you don't, and you end up paying interest. Like I heard one theory, somebody told me that a large furniture company in the area, that they don't really make, they're not in it to sell money, to sell furniture, that they don't make a lot of money off that. They actually make their money off selling this furniture, saying for the first 6 months or 12 months you don't pay interest, but then they make their money off the interest that people are paying after the fact.
Exactly.
And so we did that one year with our kids on a playground set. We looked for the deals. We got we kind of lay away 6 months no interest, but then we started paying it off, knowing that we could budget for it over the next few months. So I think that's a big risk. Warranties, always look into it if you really need it. I would say if it's not been, it's a small purchase, or if the reviews are really good, that there's not much any issues with breaking, maybe that's really good to look into. Don't be afraid to talk to the person at the store and say, hey, what's the value of this? Is it really worth it? And but most of the time, those warranties probably not needed.
I think we get wrapped up in thinking like, oh, you know, this cost me so much money, and I want to make sure that if something does happen to it, I can either replace it or I can get it fixed. But like you said, a lot of times if you're buying something that's, you know, a good product, you don't really need to spend that much money on adding an additional warranty. So that's a really good point.
And I think most places are pretty good with returns and stuff like that anyway. And so
yeah, that's another good point that you bring up, you know, looking into things like returns. And I know sometimes there's stores that are better than others when it comes to like the timing of returns. So I think that's another great point you bring up when it comes to budgeting, like also looking at things that if you do need a warranty, looking at, you know, that return policy and seeing what they can do after the fact if it does break. Yeah,
one thing that we do as well on the return route is, I learned this from my wife and her mother, they actually buy a lot of options, and then we return it before like you know, before money is due here and that, and stuff like that, to make sure, like this last week or 2 weeks, my wife has been trying on different articles of clothing on her kids with their eyes closed, you know, don't look, just to see if we like the look of it, right? And then we were returning a whole bunch of stuff, like I sat in line at Kohl's and at the Amazon return line at Kohl's just to send stuff back. But I think that that's a valuable thing to look at as well, because what happens if your child, you know, I mean, child has it, they don't like it or something, it's good to look at that as an option as well.
Exactly. And then I know we've talked about a lot of the things that we kind of have been planning, but let's kind of go back to those like 6 months, no interest, all of that.
Yes.
For someone that doesn't really understand those things, I know if you are either like a first-time buyer or you're like, it's their first year that you're buying Christmas gifts for everyone, we tend to kind of fall into those like marketing traps almost, where people are like, 6 months no interest, or buy now and get, you know, an additional gift, or if you sign up for a credit card. What are some tips you have for someone that maybe hasn't ever like gotten a store credit card, that might be thinking, oh, maybe that's a good idea, but as we all know, if you've had a store credit card, a lot of the times that's where you kind of fail when it comes to things like credit, because they have really high interest. Sometimes you forget to pay them. So what advice would you give to someone that's either a first-time Christmas gift buyer, or just people that tend to be a little more gullible when it comes to those things?
That's great. So one thing, like I said, you want to keep it as a debit card, and if you can, pay off your credit card statement at the end of the month. When it's due, you pay it off. I think another thing is, if you're going to make a purchase with a credit card, make sure that you have the money set aside for it, or if it's that 6 months, pay it off. What you should get out a pen and paper or a calculator on your phone and actually calculate, okay, this item is $250. I have 6 months to pay it off. 250 divided by 6, how much do I have to pay every month? Then you look at your regular monthly budget and say, can I afford this much money? I think the math in my head. What's the math there? But do I have X amount of money each month to pay off? And if you, even that simple exercise of running through your budget and you don't have that money, it's not a good idea to do it. But what happens, let's say you have 150 set aside now, and then it's only 100 before then, okay, maybe I can afford that now. I think, and one other thing to do as well is so make sure that you, whenever you're buying the credit card, that you have that money set aside, or you can pay it off before the interest. Do everything you can to not ever pay interest. Like pay it off at the end of the month. Use the money, transfer your checking account to pay it off, so you're not having to pay that extra interest. Because over the life of a loan, it can be more than double the cost of whatever you're buying.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm sure all these things also apply to things like personal credit cards, all of that. Trying to keep those same tips in mind whenever, if you do want to purchase with your credit card, try to use the tips that you just mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, there's value in it. There's a lot of people, there's websites, there's blogs. I even followed a blog that kind of walks you through how to get the best out of your points and your miles and trips and stuff like that, so that you can use it appropriately, but you just have to be really careful. And I think whenever you open a credit card, one thing I would recommend before you buy anything, unless it's like the sale ends in like 2 minutes, but even then I would say, step away, take 24 hours.
Right.
A word of advice I got years ago was, if it's still urgent for you after a few days, then yes, maybe you should plan on getting it, right? But don't just buy it the moment you see it. I would say wait a day, even write it down, take a picture. Most shopping apps for stores have a little barcode scanner that you can like take a picture of the barcode, save it into the shopping cart on the app, and then you can come back to it, right? That alone can make you realize, are you buying emotionally, or are you buying because you truly want it, right?
Because sometimes you are just buying emotionally. And
you're
I really didn't need that.
Or Susan would love this, or Alex would like this.
Right.
And really thinking through that, and I think making the effort to not be emotional on it. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of emotion at Christmas, right? Maybe we really want to get that person such a nice gift, or but stepping back, think about it for a few days, and even that signing up for that credit card. Take a moment, don't sign up for it then, because if you're waiting a day to buy that object, also take into account the fact you're going to wait to use that credit card. Because usually those credit card activation fees, they'll walk you, they're there to help you do it. They're incentivized to get you to do that. The store will help you get it activated pretty quickly. And so don't think that, I have to sign up for this credit card 2 days before I can actually buy this object. Usually you can buy it at that moment.
Right.
But wait a few days.
Yeah.
Just give yourself a moment to step back. Is this truly what I want? Because you may see something the next day. Oh, what about this?
Yep.
Oh,
what about this? Just regret your purchase from the day before. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think just going back to what we were initially talking about, kind of having those conversations with family and kind of setting expectations, setting those budgets beforehand will really help with, you know, when it comes to purchasing and, like you said, taking that time and stepping back and thinking a little bit more about what you're about to buy. So let's kind of get more in depth into how you would create a budget. I know it can depend, like you said, by person, by family size, what you do for Christmas, what traditions you have, all of that. How would someone kind of structure their budget? Are you able to kind of break that down bit by bit?
I can use my family as an example. So
perfect.
For the longest time, we had an Excel spreadsheet. And we would set up each category, and then we've recently, last few years, signed up for a service called YNAB, acronym for You Need a Budget. There's a lot of budgeting apps out there. You can
there's
take
so
a
many
picture.
resources.
When you buy something, you can immediately put it into your budget instead of waiting until you get home to put it in.
Right.
But if you're going to set out your Christmas budget, what I would recommend to do is I would make a list of all the things that you think you're going to buy. So for example, in the Robinson household, we have the gifts for every single person. You know, for my wife, this is the, you know, and then we've got each of our kids. Then we have stockings. For us, stockings is a fun thing. We like to fill up a lot of stuff in there, usually overflowing everywhere. And so we said, okay, how much per person? So then we have that as a category. Then we have a gift for Grandma and Grandpa Maxwell, and a gift for Grandma and Grandpa Robinson. My sibling gift that we have. So we have that category. My wife's family, we do a Secret Santa. And at Christmas time, we like to, you know, sometimes there's some charities that we want to donate to, or there's somebody in a neighborhood that's someone in our neighborhood that's in need, or somebody at work. Our work has opportunities to donate, and so you have that set aside as well. We also have a family Christmas budget because we know we're gonna go over in somebody's category, right? Because we have 2 birthdays at Christmas time too, and so we have to kind of organize it all, and so we use that family Christmas slush to be able to kind of buffer anything that we go over, because there are still those emotional. I mean, I say try not to be emotional. There's still the emotional, and we get the week before, and the 6-year-old's like, oh, I really want this.
You're like, okay,
let me see what I can figure out, right? And by having that slush, it helped us to be able to make up for that. So we have like a Christmas slush, a family Christmas. We have neighborhood gifts. So, or like co-worker gifts, like that we give to other people, like we'll set aside that. So then once we have all our categories mapped out, then you say, well, what money can I use? So that you can do it 2 ways. You can say, well, I'm planning on have X amount of money to spend, and then you can kind of just split up based on that. Or you can say, well, this is how much I'm expecting to spend. Like if you're thinking in the future and how much you need to start saving up, then you can then add it all up, and then you can say, well, the total of how much I'm expecting is this. Oh, I only have this much. And then you go back and you can start playing with the numbers, right? Christmas cards is another category that we have, because that's a big deal for us, is to send out Christmas cards. Some people are like, I just post on Facebook and I'm done.
Right.
But some people want to have that card and to keep up with friends from college. And so we have a budget for that. One thing that we started doing a few years ago that we really appreciated is that it's taken a few years to get to that point. So if you're paid on a bi-weekly basis, there's 2 months a year that you have a third paycheck.
Right.
We in our family call it the 25th, 26th paycheck.
Right.
And we will take one of those and set it aside for Christmas.
Nice.
And so then as soon as that check comes through, because there's not benefits coming out of it, it's not a regular monthly budget because we're not used to a third paycheck, we plop that into a savings account. And then we take our budgets and say, okay, this is how much we expect for each of like the kids' presents, for the family presents, things like that. And then we pull from that and we see if we have enough. Right. Another option is YNAB has a really cool saving feature, and you can automatically have it set to populate each month. It'll automatically say this is how much you're budgeting from your monthly amount to that category, that savings amount. Right. And so that's something you can do as well. But I think so. You plan out everything. Try and just have a breakdown. You don't have to decide now if you're not going to spend the money on it.
Right.
Right. Because my guess is you're probably going to spend the money on it, and probably more. Which is why we love our family Christmas slush. Plus, we even have like a Christmas slush as well, just in case, like we go over and something like that, or the new neighbor moves in, or there's always something that comes up. So that's kind of what we do. I'm trying to think, I have some other notes here to see if I. Yeah, so that's kind of what we've done. One thing that we have found as well, sometimes my little kids, we have a 7-month-old, he doesn't really need a lot of toys, but we have the same budget for him, so we've been able to kind of use that with other siblings. Something else that we've done sometimes is we'll buy clothes for our kids, or school, like books and things like that. And we have in our regular monthly budget, we have a clothes amount that we save every month for clothes and stuff like that. Sometimes we'll take from that as well. Right. But we still have to be really disciplined about putting all our expenses in and making sure. Because one thing you have to be careful with is, okay, I budgeted, let's say $100 for this person, but then I've now bought $200 worth of stuff, not realizing it because this receipt hasn't been put in and stuff like that.
Right.
I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
yeah, no, that's definitely helpful. And I want to get a little more into, people kind of think of budgeting in relation to like their income, obviously, and like their paycheck, all of that. What is a good rule of thumb when it comes to saving for Christmas, like on your paycheck? Like, how much should you save each paycheck if you want to generate a good budget for Christmas?
That's grown over the years for us, right? Because our family's grown and our expenses have increased. I think to really truly accurately answer that one, I think people need to sit down and figure out what they want out of Christmas. Because you may not care as much about gifts, and you may like to do like a trip or an experience, maybe ski passes or maybe a weekend getaway here, and so that's going to influence your budget differently than maybe somebody who has teenagers who all want iPhones, versus like having little kids who want a small toy. So it's hard for me to say exactly an amount. I think that's helpful, but I think you have to sit down and kind of figure out what you want. Right,
just going back to that like brain dump of what do I need, and I guess not being fearful of writing everything down. I think sometimes we may think it's a little over the top to just be like, I need to write every single thing down. So I think that really helps if you're trying to budget, really thinking really deep about what each family member might want, what you need to pay for, and again, like adding that additional kind of buffer if you do go over on things.
I think it's actually kind of liberating, at least for me, to know, I only have X amount of money to spend on this. And I start to be creative, and I start to look for things, and I start to come with ideas. And I think it's valuable, like at least for my kids, to be able to know, hey, they're never, sorry, I'm struggling with my words, but that they need to learn, that they're learning that they can't just have whatever they want. Right? The rest of their life, they're going to be trying to manage their money, right? You hear stories of people who are millionaires, billionaires, that they're still managing, they don't know how to use their money correctly. And so I think that's a valuable thing, because I think another thing as well is to help them remember that the gift is not the most important thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And their value and their self-worth is not based off of the gift, but that it's, this is somebody who's loving me, who's giving me something. That takes a moment, like as I get older, to learn that. And I think it's okay when you brain dump and you put everything out on a piece of paper or on a computer or however you want to. It's helpful for you to kind of look and see where you're at.
Right. And that's really important. I mean, just being able to take those moments and think about that, but also remembering that, this time of the year is stressful for some people, and finances can, bring stress and anxiety and all these things. And I think going back to our initial conversation of setting those expectations and not feeling like you have to buy someone everything, I think because Christmas is such a time of giving and being around your family, you want to give back and you want to show that love through gifts or through, providing certain things. But it's important to remember that budgeting, yes, is going to help, and it's going to help you reduce that stress, manage some of that anxiety you have around the holidays. But also, again, setting expectations and not pressuring yourself so much to I need to set this much aside because the holidays are coming up. Yeah, so, and I think, and every year is going to be different with how much you want to spend. And I think if you budget accordingly, you might be able to actually find that you get more. Right.
It also makes you stop to reflect, okay, does this person really want this? Exactly. Like, because maybe I only have this amount of money. Am I going to really, I want to make sure that they love it. And so maybe you're going to be more mindful, more thoughtful about it. Because how many of us have those gifts that we give to somebody and 2 days later is sitting in a cupboard or a closet somewhere. So make sure you get a gift receipt, right? It's okay if they want to return it. That's totally fair. I think that's something that's really, really helpful. But. Yeah.
So that was all great information. I mean, there's definitely things that I learned myself personally. Good. I'm still learning budget, still learning money, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching today are also kind of, learning or want to learn more about. So I'm going to open it up for questions if anyone has any questions. We'll give it a couple minutes. In the meantime, if we get any questions, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your Christmas plans and what you plan on doing?
That's great. One other thing, I just had some things I want to share really quick. I have some notes here. I take some notes. But something else that you want to you can look at as well is price matching.
Right.
So it's so easy nowadays. If I'm in a store, I can pull out the app for a lot of different stores and I can check the prices. But then sometimes the stores themselves, like Best Buy, like they will match any price on Amazon.
Right.
You know, because so you can just show on their phone and they will automatically give you the price. The other thing as well is like Walmart. Like I found something on the other day at Walmart.com that was much cheaper than the store, and I asked the associate, said, hey, you know, what's the discrepancy here? And they just gave me the price online. Sometimes they won't do it, but it doesn't hurt to ask and see.
Yeah, and I think that's a new thing that's come up recently where people have figured out that you can do that because a lot of people just don't know. And someone tells you, oh, you know, you can get it price, and they're like, what?
Yeah, I mean, just step back and think. It's the whole check. Maybe take a few days before you buy something.
Right.
Right. If it's a big ticket item, like if it's a box of chocolates that's, you know, you just buy at Walmart, great, or whatever the store is. But I think also like if you start searching a little bit, you can probably even look at local stuff. There's so much good local stuff that you can buy from, which is so nice to support to our community as well, small businesses as well. So from a Christmas perspective, we have, the first thing is, I said 2 of my kids have birthdays. So one of my daughters is turning 13. We're going to have a teenager in our house, our oldest. And so we're celebrating her birthday on Friday. We get through that, then we have the next one's Christmas, and so we'll get together with my wife's family Christmas Eve. My family is out of state, so we won't be able to spend time with them. Then Christmas will be at home with my family, and then we have another birthday the 28th.
Yeah, so. Birthdays in December are always so
I know,
hard.
we didn't plan that well, and then our anniversary is on the same day as that other birthday, so we're trying to wrap that.
Yeah, it's striking to me how many people have that same like issue where it's like we have birthdays, we have a special day, and we have Christmas all in once. But that's why you're here to give us all these great tips. So if you do have all those things coming up, you're able to kind of budget for all of those things as well.
And if you haven't budgeted this year, do your best, right?
Right.
I think that's something awesome to do, is to just, you know, keep what you have, try and make a list of where you're at, and then also one thing that's beneficial to the budget is going back, right? So take a moment, like the week after Christmas or 2 weeks after Christmas, and say, okay, all our expenses are finally here. How did it go?
Right.
Did we really spend X amount of money on each child,
right.
or, you know, which was the favorite child, or,
right.
And then that helps you set you up for the next year, because if saving up a few dollars every month for 12 months is easier to do than trying to fit all those expenses in your budget in December.
Yep, exactly.
Even if there's a Christmas bonus at work, it's probably not going to go as far as you would have hoped.
Yeah, and Christmas, I mean, money only goes so much.
I know. We keep hoping that our money tree is going to grow something, but it still hasn't produced fruit, so we're trying. But
no, those are all awesome tips. We are going to compile everything that Quincy talked about today and share it with those of you who might want to read a little bit more or go back to what he talked about, and we'll put it up on a post. But we also do have a giveaway associated with this segment today, so make sure to stay tuned on our social media to learn more about that giveaway that we will be announcing tomorrow. So stay tuned. It might add a little more to your budget, which is great during the holidays.
Absolutely.
But thanks so much, Quincy. If there's anything else you want to add before we hop off, feel free.
I think so. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you soon on our next Facebook Live segment. Thank you.